Hi, I'm Rob Duncan, Scoutmaster of Troop 275 in Bethlehem, North Carolina. In 2019, my 14-year-old son and I hiked about 1,300 miles along the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to New Jersey. Along the trail, we were well aware of many people practicing and preaching the 7 principles of leave no trace. At a hostel one night, a renowned trail angel and publisher of the Hiker Yearbook, Odie Norman, taught us a group of hand signals to help us to remember how to follow the principles of leave no trace. I want to give a shout out to Odie and others like him who help to educate and support hikers and to preserve the beauty of backcountry trails for all to enjoy. The 7 principles of leave no trace are: number 1, plan ahead and prepare. Number 2, hike and camp on durable surfaces. Number 3, dispose of waste properly. Number 4, leave what you find. Number 5, minimize campfire impacts. Number 6, respect wildlife of all the horned varieties and other. And finally, number 7, be respectful to other visitors. Peace and high five to everybody. Second class requirement 1B requires you to explain the principles of leave no trace and tell how you practice them on an overnight camping trip. These principles overlap with the points of the outdoor code and tread lightly, which you'll also learn about through the tenderfoot and first class ranks. So, number 1, plan ahead and prepare. Know the regulations for the area that you're going to be. If you're on private property, make sure that you've secured permission to be there from the landowners. Always check the weather conditions. Be aware of the weather that you're going to be experiencing and plan and pack for it accordingly. And do all that you can to avoid extreme weather that would be dangerous. Avoid areas that are at high use. For example, the southern part of the Appalachian Trail is going to be trampled in March, April, and May from all the thru hikers coming through. So campsites will be at a premium. You may want to avoid those areas and come back sometime later in the year when there's not as much high traffic on the area. Study the terrain and make sure that you match the terrain to what your group can handle. You don't plan a 10-mile day when your group is only capable of doing 6 or 7 miles a day. And finally, plan your gear and your food carefully to minimize waste. You want to have as light a pack as you can while still being safe, and always repackage your food to reduce the waste that you produce along the trail. Principle number 2, hike and camp on durable surfaces. There's a lot of things to remember here. First, hike only on established trails and stay on the trail. Don't cut switchbacks. Yes, a trail is an impact to the outdoors, but it's best to have one well-designed trail and stay on it than to create multiple others and traveling poorly chosen paths. If you're in a pristine area and there is no trail, then don't walk single file. Disperse your group so that you're not creating a new trail in an area where there should not be a trail. Durable surfaces are preferable for hiking. Durable surfaces include rock, sand, gravel, and snow. Traveling over those types of terrain will leave little evidence that you've been there. Try to avoid hiking across vegetation when you can. Use established campsites and try to avoid creating new campsites. Properly using an established campsite will have no new noticeable impact on the terrain and the environment that you're in. And finally, camp at least 200 feet away from water sources. First, you want to protect the water source by not having your waste travel there. And secondly, you want to have a wide berth to allow wildlife access to their water. Number 3, dispose of waste properly. Okay, we'll talk about the meaning of this one in just a sec. First of all, pack it in, pack it out. That's a common adage along the trail. Anything that you carry into the outdoors needs to come out with you. This includes things that you might think about as being biodegradable. Orange peelings, peanut shells, apple cores, none of those are indigenous to the Appalachian Mountains, and they shouldn't be left along the trail or in campsite areas. Anything that you carry in must come out. So pack it in, pack it out. Don't burn your food waste. A lot of folks think, well, I'll just pour this hot chocolate in my cup and then burn the paper. Well, hot chocolate has a foil wrapper that won't burn. And a lot of times when you burn your paper waste, your food waste, it's not completely burned and it still has a smell that will attract animals. And that will cause animals to associate people with food and can increase encounters. So we want to try to avoid that. Now, here's the meaning of this one. This is like digging out a cat hole. When I was on trail, I carried a little trowel here. It weighs an ounce or less. It's aluminum, and you use this to dig a cat hole. A cat hole is about a 4 to 6 inch across, 6 to 8 inch deep hole that you're going to use for solid waste when you have to go in the woods. And you're going to cover that back over and cover it up with leaves so that animals don't get into your waste or other hikers. So always be careful to dig a cat hole when you've got to go do your business. Be careful that you walk at least 70 adult steps, that's 200 feet, away from water sources and campsites to minimize the chance that others will come in contact with your waste or that your waste will leach into valuable water sources. In this area, it's permissible to bury toilet paper, but it's not in all places. For example, in the desert, the soil is not conducive to breaking down toilet paper, so you're encouraged to pack that out in a Ziploc bag. Just know before you go. And finally, make sure that you wash your dishes away from water supplies. Carry clean water at least 200 feet or 70 adult steps away from water sources. Wash it there. Dispose of your soap by cleaning it. Use biodegradable soap. But protect the water sources at all costs. Don't bathe or wash dishes in those water sources. Soaps, even biodegradable ones, will have an impact on water. So make sure that you keep your waste at least 200 feet away from water sources. Number 4, we talked about the photographic cropping tool like this. Leave what you find. The Scout Handbook says examine but do not touch historic structures and artifacts. It encourages us to leave rocks, plants, and other natural objects where you find them. That's a hard thing to do. If you find a cool feather, the temptation is to stick that in your headband or your hat and display it proudly, but that deprives others from the opportunity to see that evidence of wildlife that you saw. So take nothing but pictures and leave nothing but footprints. We're encouraged not to construct lean-tos or furniture or dig trenches in camping areas, because obviously when someone sees that, they're going to know people have been there, and that's not leaving no trace. If you clear your area for your tent of twigs and rocks and such as that, make sure that you put that back before you leave the camping area. You want to leave the area where you're camping and hiking as natural looking as you have found it. And finally, don't pick flowers. If everybody just picks 1 or 2, it won't take a very large group to decimate the entire area of wildflowers. So again, take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints. Number 5, and this is a hard one for scouts because scouts like to have fire, but we're encouraged when in the backcountry especially to minimize our campfire impacts. In the backcountry, campfires can leave behind quite a bit of evidence and impact to the environment. The heat from the fire will sterilize the soil and it'll make it where nothing will grow there again. So when you're in the backcountry, use backpacking stoves for your cooking and headlamps for lighting. When you're allowed to have fires, look for pre-existing fire rings. They're very common in camping areas. Most established camping areas will have a pre-made rock or iron fire ring, and you're encouraged to use those. When you're outdoors, keep your fires small. Use only wood smaller than your wrist that you can break with your hands, and make sure that when you're burning your fire, tend the fire and burn it all down to ash and put the fire out. Then once the fire is out, cold out, you can put your hand on the coals and they don't burn you. Scatter the coals over a wide area outside of the area where you're camping so that that campfire is left, so that the area is not evident that you've had a campfire there. Don't build fires next to rock outcroppings. All the smoke and soot that comes off the campfire, that'll be on those rocks for a long time and you'll not be able to get it off. We mentioned this before, use only dead, downed, dry wood. Don't break limbs off of trees, whether they're dead or not, because when you get to an area and all the trees have no limbs from here down, you're like, well, that didn't happen naturally. That's a trace that someone has been here. So pick up little wood over a wide area where you're camping, off the ground, okay? Use only dead, dry, downed wood. And finally, we just mentioned, pick up wood from a wide area around the campsite so that other people will have access to the wood and you don't have this whole area in the woods with no downed wood. Number 6, respect wildlife, okay? When you're observing wildlife, make sure that you do so from a distance. Don't approach them. If wildlife responds or reacts to your presence, then you're too close and you should back up. You're in their space, so please be sure that you give them their space and realize that you're their visitors. Never feed animals, whether intentionally or not. Always hang your food at night. We call it a bear hang on the Appalachian Trail, and one of the videos I'm planning to do is a Pacific Crest Trail bear hang to show you how you can properly store your food from bears and other animals that might get into it, because it's very devastating if a bear gets into your food bag. First, you've got no food. Second, the bear says, ooh, there's people, they're going to have food, I'll come back here tonight and look around. And we want to minimize that possibility. So be careful with your food. If you carry a dog with you when you're hiking or camping, make sure that you keep your dog on leash. Your dog is not wildlife, and they may scare off the other wildlife that you hope to see, or they may run into, try to get closer to wildlife such as a bear or a skunk, and that could be devastating to your pet. So be careful of that. Quick movements and loud noises stress animals out. So try to keep your noise level low. Hike in smaller groups. If you're listening to your music or your podcasts, use headphones, but I always just used one so that I could hear what was going on around me, because I didn't want a bear crackling through the woods somewhere without me being able to hear it. And I'm using this headphone now because the mic is better than the one that's ever on my camera there. And then finally, we mentioned this earlier, allow animals access to water sources by camping at least 200 feet away from water sources. And finally, principle number 7. Okay, be considerate of other visitors. Peace to you, high five to you, buddy. Although on the trail, we fist bump to reduce the possibility of passing along viruses. So respecting other visitors can be a lot of things. First, protect the quality of their experience. And we just mentioned, limit your use of technology. A lot of people escape to the outdoors to get away from technology, and they're offended when they see other folks constantly on their devices, especially in shelter areas or campsites where multiple people congregate. Not everybody has the same taste in music or podcasts that you do, so use headphones. Just be courteous to others. When meeting other hikers on the trail, keep in mind the hiker that's going uphill has the right of way. They're in a groove, they're moving, they're fighting gravity. Step off the trail carefully and allow them to pass on through. Okay, if you're the downhill hiker. The uphill hiker has the right of way. Be attuned to folks that are hiking faster than you are, and this is another reason for only wearing one earbud. If you hear somebody approaching from behind you, you need to find a place that you can step off without damaging vegetation and allow them to pass on through. Don't hold somebody else up. When you take breaks, do so off the trail on a durable surface so that you're not blocking the trail by sitting there laying out on your pack inside of it or beside the trail. When you are camping, it's discouraged to have brightly colored things that can be seen from a distance, such as tents. You know, we're encouraged to get tents and packs and clothing that's neutral earth tones if you can, or colors that will better blend in with the environment. If you're traveling with a dog, we mentioned keep your dog on a leash, and also make sure that you bury your dog's waste. The same leave no trace principle number 3 applies to your dog's waste as it does yours. If you're camping with others, respect hiker midnight. Hiker midnight is a time around 9 o'clock when most hikers settle down. Although be aware, a lot of hikers will settle down at dark whether it's 9 o'clock or not. So just consider where you are and the fact that other people may be willing or may be ready to settle down for the night and settling in. So be courteous to them. When you're out and around in the dark at night in camp, make sure that you get a headlamp that's got a red light setting. Okay? The red light setting is not going to blind folks that you come in contact with, but it will certainly provide plenty of light for you to see around to do what you're doing. Okay? So those are the 7 principles of leave no trace. Number 1, plan ahead and prepare. Number 2, hike and camp on durable surfaces. Number 3, dispose of waste properly. Number 4, leave what you find. Number 5, minimize campfire impacts. Number 6, whoops, I missed a finger. Number 6, respect wildlife. And finally, number 7, be considerate of other visitors. So thanks for joining me tonight. If you would like to learn more about Leave No Trace, I would encourage you to visit lnt.org. That's where I got a lot of the information that I used in this video. Also, have a quick look inside of your backpack. I've got mine right here. You may find, oops, still with my headlamp. You may find, and I'll blow this up. You may find that the maker of your backpack has put a stamp in here with the 7 principles of Leave No Trace to remind you to tread lightly on the environment. So again, thanks for joining us. We hope that you'll have a good virtual camping trip this weekend, and we'll see you real soon.